Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Don't you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
Film church.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
Oh, learned men, I saw the witches kiss the evil one on his behind, and the mother of Anna, the printer's wife, wished me a scalding death. That damned woman, I saw her kissing the evil one so tenderly.
Hello, and welcome to Film Church Radio's Darnish Horror Month. This is the podcast that treats cinema as a religion. It's Sunday, I'm Lewis.
And I'm Branden.
And we are your co-hosts here to talk about movies. Each week, Branden and I alternate picking a film for us both to watch and discuss. Today, I picked the film Häxan from 1922, written, directed, and starring Benjamin Christensen. This is a film that has been on my shelf for a while. I haven't got around to watching it, unfortunately. And I think the reason for that was I knew that it was semi-documentary, semi-kind of narrative, I guess. And I didn't know what to expect. So when I found out we were doing this Darnish Horror Month, I thought it would be the perfect way to round things off. The only thing I can start any conversation with is saying that this is a film unlike any other I think we've seen before. And the whole way through, I just couldn't wait to get to this part where we hear what Branden thinks about it, because it is a crazy, crazy movie. But we will get into all the ins and outs of it in just a little bit. And if you are a regular listener to the show, you will know that we will be telling you what we are going to be watching next week. And also talking about what's next after our Darnish Horror Month, what we've got in store for the month coming up. So stick around, and after our conversation on Häxan, you'll be able to hear what we'll be watching next week. Before we jump into the movies that we have been watching, we'd like to thank everyone who has been listening to the podcast and sending their love for the show. If you're new to the show and are enjoying it, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when a new episode is available. This is a film church, so we post episodes on Sundays. And if you really, really, really enjoy the show, just share it with your friends. Tell people, rate and review it. It helps us out. More people can find us, and that's what we want. We want more people to join this wonderful congregation. You can find us on social media platforms at Film Church Radio, and you can find us on YouTube and other social media where we do have some extra content for you all. So go ahead and check that out. We have a lot of our back episodes streaming as well, so you can go back and check them out too. We talk about a wide range of films. Before we get on to our main film, Branden and I like to talk about what else we've been watching this week. Some trailers for you at home. So Branden, what have you been watching, my friend?
I have been watching some movies, Lewis.
Nice. I was hoping you were going to say that.
So my girlfriend and I went to a Halloween party this last weekend, and the theme was Disney villains.
Nice.
So I went as Scar from The Lion King.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend went as Cruella de Vil. And yes,
Very
she was
cool.
trying to get my fur the whole night. I can't totally take credit for that joke. When I told our friend Zach, who was on a guest at the beginning of this Darnish Horror Month, about our costumes, he was like, "Oh, she's going to be trying to get your fur." But if you want to see our amazing costumes, I posted a picture of us on the Film Church Radio Twitter, so go check it out. Give us a like and follow there. My makeup was awesome. My sister did it. And,
it looked great.
Thanks. But because of that, we ended up rewatching 101 Dalmatians from 1961, the cartoon, of course, from Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Classic. You know?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it in I don't even know how long. But it's weird when you rewatch a film that you've literally watched a million times.
Yeah.
After you haven't watched it in so long, because it's just so. It's like a part of you. You know what I mean? So it's weird just to like have forgotten stuff, but not really, you know?
Yeah.
And it's great. It's a fun little movie. It's so short. It just goes by.
Yeah.
You know, it never felt like that when I was a kid, but yeah, it's great. The quote that the quote that I always say from that movie is "Crazy woman driver."
I don't know. It's sometimes cinema can be so like visceral, but it just like triggers something in my senses. I must have watched that around Easter because every time like I rewatch it, it just reminds me of chocolate, and I don't know why. Because there's no chocolate in it.
Yeah,
but I must have had an experience when I watched it as a kid with chocolate.
Yeah,
and it just just stuck in my mind. Especially when they're in the snow. I don't know what. When they're in the snow, I'm just like, man, I could. I really want chocolate. So, yeah, it's bizarre.
Because it feels more like a Christmas movie because of all the snow or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah,
that's funny. But after that, we watched Enchanted from 2007.
Yeah.
I think I'd seen it before, but just rewatching it, it's like, wow, that's a really good movie. Like it's a fun, like it's not, it's like a updated Disney fairy tale for like kids that grew up watching Disney fairy tales,
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, I'm sure younger kids enjoy it, but like, if you're a little bit older and you grew up in the Disney universe, like, you'd really enjoy it. Like, all the acting and writing and performances and, just the whole story. It just kind of makes fun of itself in a lot of ways too, but still has a lot of heart to it. Yeah.
And there's a sequel coming out, right?
Yeah, there's a sequel coming soon.
Yeah.
Disenchanted.
Nice. I've never seen it, and we saw the trailer for it the other day, and Chelsea was like, "We need to watch it. We need to watch it before that new one." I'm like, it's always been something that has sounded interesting, but never got round to it.
Yeah, I think you would enjoy it. I mean, it's sometimes one of those things. Like that movie came out when I was 17, so I'm sure I was not going to see Disney movies at the time, but
me neither.
But yeah, I mean, it's it's good, and I think I had seen it before, like I said, so it snuck in there somewhere. But my girlfriend loves it.
Oh, sweet.
So,
yeah.
And then I put on Lady Snowblood the other night from 1973, which is a film that heavily influenced Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill.
Yeah.
I was looking for some good duel movies, and it doesn't. I mean, it has like a couple of fighting things, but it's mostly there's not like any good like sword on sword duels, which is kind of what I was looking for.
Yeah,
but it was a really good watch. I mean, if you're a fan of Kill Bill at all, like you should watch Lady Snowblood. It's on HBO Max, and it
sweet.
I mean, you can see. I mean, there's so many things in there that Tarantino directly pulled.
Oh, really?
Into Kill. Yeah. I mean, it's like almost the exact same. I mean, it's all very adjacent Kill Bill. I mean, like with like it's like a woman revenge story. It's like she has a list of names.
Yeah.
The way that the characters like pop up on screen, kind of like pop arty. It's like taking like I don't know, taking pop culture and genre films and trying to like do something new with them, kind of. Of course, Kill Bill does it way more heavily, but yeah, I mean, it was a good watch. It's with any subtitled film, I feel like I've got to watch it a few times to really understand it. Because I'm kind of a slow reader, and if I don't kind of like pause and watch it, then I'll like miss a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Or if I'm not like right up on the screen. And the subtitles were also a little difficult to read because they were white, and then like so much of the film was white.
It's white. Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I would definitely have to pause this to read it, but we like watched it with other people in the living room, so I wasn't going to be that guy.
Yeah.
Taking 6 hours to watch an hour and a half movie. But yeah, I mean, it was really good. Like it's beautifully shot. Yeah, it was good.
That's great. Yeah.
I think I gave it a 3.5, maybe. Out of 5 on Letterboxd. And then we also put on Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, the first episode. Have you seen anything about the show yet?
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the show itself, but I've seen that it's getting good reviews. I mean,
nice.
I think Del Toro is, pretty well regarded.
Oh yeah,
in terms of that world.
Yeah.
So, and I cannot wait for his Pinocchio.
Yeah.
The buzz around it is just insane. So
yeah.
But I'm sure. Good. Yeah. So what did you make? And it's episodic, right? It's not like
so it's like, I mean, it's kind of funny, talking about Creepshow and anthologies and stuff.
Yeah.
With when we did our Creepshow episode, it's episodic, and it's it's the premise is like he's got this cabinet of curiosities and he pulls the story out.
Yeah.
And he hosts the show like Twilight Zone style.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock presents.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, he comes out, talks about what's about to happen, and yeah, it was great. The first episode was good. I'm on board. I can't wait to watch a few more. I think there's like 4 out right now.
That's awesome.
And they're nice, like hour-long episodes. Cool. So
like creepy and spooky, or
yeah, creepy, spooky, horror-ish. I mean, it's
nice.
it's all very Del Toro feeling.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
So that was it for me, man.
Sweet. That's a great segue, honestly, because it's on the bottom of my list, but I'll talk about it now because it kind of relates. I watched Vampire from 1932, which is a film that I've had on Criterion for a while, not watched it, and then another label that I like put it out, and I bought that as well. And I was like, man, I've got 2 copies of the same film that I haven't even seen. And I had a night to myself, so I sat down and watched it. And one of the special features on the disc is an audio commentary by Del Toro.
Oh, nice.
Because he loves the film, apparently.
Yeah.
And I watched it, and it's 70-something minutes long. It's not very long at all. And it's very atmospheric. Uh-huh. To say, it was made, 10 years after Nosferatu, which is very... He's a vampire, he's going to kill you. And this is kind of more dreamlike. It was very bizarre. I gave it 3 stars, but I really, really want to go and watch the commentary or listen to the commentary.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, especially when it's a filmmaker, I feel the same with like Tarantino, Scorsese, Del Toro as well. Like, if they're passionate about something, they can articulate it. Yeah. And kind of tell you why they're passionate about it. So I definitely want to go and watch it again with his commentary and just see what he likes.
Yeah.
Just to see if there's anything I'm missing. But apart from that, we have been watching so many horror films. Yeah. It's as the day that this goes out, Halloween is tomorrow. So we have been, stockpiling and getting through loads. And I'm not going to talk about all of them in depth, but we watched the last 2 of the latest Halloween trilogy. Halloween Kills from 2021 and then Halloween Ends from this year. Yeah. Halloween Kills is terrible. And I can remember when it came out at the time, that was what I heard, so we didn't watch it, because we really enjoyed the first Halloween in this trilogy.
Yeah.
It was doing something different, and it felt fresh, and, you know, kind of played with the characters a little bit more, which I liked. That was like, they were treading water. You could tell that this was supposed to be 2 films, and the studio were like, do a third. And they were just treading water. It's honestly, it's just boring, and there's kills in it. None of it makes sense. And they don't understand Michael, which is very upsetting.
Yeah.
Halloween Ends was slightly better, I think. I think that it, again, the problem with these two is that they're both, the idea was there. You could see the nugget that they were going for.
Yeah.
But they set it up, and then the payoff just doesn't happen. You know, it's just not there, which is a real shame.
Yeah.
And Halloween Ends, I thought, was going in a really, really interesting direction. And then it just ends up being the same. And you're just like, I've seen this. You know, the direction you were going before was more interesting.
Yeah.
And it could have been so much better. So both of them were a real shame. And I think the one Halloween, the one before that, can stand fine on its own.
Yeah.
I don't think you need these two.
Well, maybe they'll just wait another 40 years and then be like, yeah, Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends didn't happen either. And we're just now going to make another sequel to...
I mean, that's the way we're going. Because I did hear that the guy that directed all 3 has now been not commissioned, but like approached to direct a trilogy following The Exorcist. And it's like, do we need it?
No.
Do we need, like,
There's
we
so
don't
many
need
Exorcist
it.
movies.
Yeah. And the first one is perfectly fine. It does not need to follow up. It's just the, you know, the terrible scraping of the barrel that we've come to know as Hollywood now.
Yeah.
Talking of Hollywood, that was a weird segue. My wife and I actually got to the cinema, and we decided to go and see Ticket to Paradise, the
Nice.
George Clooney, Julia Roberts rom-com.
Yeah, I saw that kind of pop out of nowhere, and I was like, whoa. And this is going in theaters? This is something that doesn't really happen anymore.
Yeah. And look, it's exactly what you would expect it to be.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen the poster. If you've seen the trailer, you know what's going to happen. But it's 2 of the biggest film stars from our lifetime in a beautiful location. I think it's Bora Bora or somewhere like that. With a pretty good script. You know, it had me laughing a few times, and it's not going to like change the world. But as a date night movie, it's perfect.
Yeah.
You know, we had a really good time with it. So
Nice.
I was really happy because they play like a divorced couple. I was worried that the jibing was going to be, because they kind of verbally square off quite a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it would get into like, you know, nasty territory where you'd be like, this isn't funny. This is just sad.
Yeah.
But it never does. It's always kind of, you know, that it's never...
It treads that line really well.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, but not mean.
Yeah.
You know, which is really good. And then we watched Prom Night from 1980, another Jamie Lee Curtis slasher movie, which I'd never seen and I'd heard some things about. And I had a good time with it. It's perfectly fine. It's an hour and a half, and it takes an hour and 15 minutes for anything to happen. But that's okay. You know, it's of its time, and there's a prolonged dance number in the middle of it, which is very bizarre. And then we watched They Live, carrying on that John Carpenter vibe from The Fog. It was another one of his films that I hadn't seen that I wanted to turn on and kind of see. And I really liked it.
Yeah.
It's designed really well, and I mean the character choices don't make sense, but they don't really need to. And it feels like it's just made really well. And Chelsea made a very good observation when we were watching it. She said that it reminded her of the Terminator, and it did. It's kind of LA in that, you know, late 80s, early 90s period. It's just a lot of fun, and the designs are really good, and it ends on a really good joke, which I appreciate. So.
Sweet. It sounds good. Yeah, I'd like to watch more Carpenter
Yeah.
films. What year? So that was 1988.
8.
So
yeah.
what year was The Thing? So that
The Thing was that 86? I think
82.
82. Oh, okay.
Wait, so when and The Fog was 80? So
80,
The Fog
yeah.
came. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. So
Yeah.
The Fog came just before this.
Mm-hmm.
Before The Thing. And okay, cool.
Yeah. And no doubt I'm going to knock a few more off my to watch list, I think, because the ones I've watched so far have just been really, really good. So,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep kind of tracking down his films and seeing what else there is in the coming months.
Yeah.
And then I watched my all-time favorite horror movie. I love it to bits. Scream from 1996.
Yes.
I think as like when I went to school to study film and we did a class on horror films and we showed this film was shown, and when you realize just how much this is steeped in its own like history, there's so many references to other films. There's so many conventions that are played with. There's so much in there that's for nerds and like people that love this stuff, for us to get a kick out of it. It just every watch for me just works.
Yeah.
And Wes Craven is just so good at like building these sequences and these characters, and it's my favorite. I love it. It's one of my all-time favorite films. So
he just kind of like breaks down the whole horror movie genre and flips it on its head.
Yeah, he's like, here are the conventions. And he even tells you, he's like, here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And as an audience, you're still expecting it to happen.
Yeah.
But things keep changing, and it's so good. And we're probably going to try and fit in all of them. I've got a soft spot for most of them,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've only seen the first one, so I need to go through all of them. My brother-in-law likes him a lot, and he's even watched the show, which he says is terrible, but he watches it.
Oh,
anyway.
really? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've never watched the show, but I think all the films have done something for me.
Yeah.
So, because the first 4 was directed by Craven himself.
Yeah.
So,
and then there's like 6 total or something.
So they're making they've just wrapped on the 6th, I think.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So the 5th was the one that came out earlier this year.
Yeah.
That was called Scream Again.
Gotcha.
Not Scream Again,
but
just Scream.
Just Scream. Not just Scream, but just
Scream.
The word Scream by itself. But also, those are good titles for movies.
Just Scream
and Scream Again.
Yeah. The word Scream. Oh, man. We've got the whole 20 years of Scream movies mapped out for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a very spooky week at the Walker household.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we're going to do some pumpkin carving tomorrow.
Sweet.
So I'm hoping I can do a Nosferatu pumpkin, but
Oh, that would be dope.
yeah,
If
it's
you
looking...
do, you got to post it on the Film Church Twitter.
I feel like I looked it up and I was like, I could do that. And then I sat with a pumpkin in front of me and was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we'll see. It's my aim. So fingers crossed.
You got this.
And now, our feature presentation, Häxan, Witchcraft Through the Ages from 1922. The letterbox summary is grave robbing, torture, possessed nuns, and a satanic Sabbath. Benjamin Christensen's legendary film uses a series of dramatic vignettes to explore the scientific hypotheses that the witches of the Middle Ages suffered the same hysteria as turn-of-the-century psychiatric patients. But the film itself is far from serious. Instead, it's a witch's brew of the scary, gross, and darkly humorous. Dum dum dum.
Beautiful.
This... I feel like I needed a break after that. This is a very interesting film. I think it's fair to say. And at the top, you may have heard me say that it is unlike anything you've ever seen before. And I think because this film was made in 1922, there's not much that it's not like anything that's come before it. It's kind of forging its own path through this forest that it takes us to. And I don't know, it's not really one thing. I don't think you can pin it down to one genre of movie, because it's not. It's got all these elements to it. It's a very strange film, and it's split into 6 vignettes. So after we get initial thoughts, I thought it'd be interesting to kind of go through each part of the film and kind of see what they're doing and what it all means. So obviously, this was a film that you had watched for the first time, Brandon.
Yes.
Had you heard about it before? And if not, regardless, what did you think when you watched it?
I had not heard about it before.
Okay.
And kind of right off the bat, when the film started and got going, I just kept thinking about what you had said to me recently just about the era of silent cinema, and how it's so interesting in that time because of the inventiveness of the art form. It's like these filmmakers were paving the way. They were trying to figure out what the language of cinema was. And so there were no rules. It's like nowadays, if you want to be a filmmaker, I mean, yeah, you could still go and do things without, on your own, make your own rules. I mean, that's what every filmmaker should do. But, there's all these screenwriting books and formulas, and you got to have your beginning, middle, and end, and there's got to be a climax and a resolution and a antagonist and a protagonist and some side plot and all these things that are like you got to here's what sells and makes money, and this era is just making it up as they go along, which is so interesting because you get all this weird, interesting stuff come out of that time. And some of it works and some of it doesn't. This was interesting, like you said. There's a lot of like weird, disturbing imagery, and so much so that I feel like I missed a lot. Like, just if you just watch the film once, you kind of like take a breath, and half of it you've already forgotten, because it's like it just flashes. Like if you blink, you'll miss it. There were so many interesting shots that were literally just like a split second of like a close up on someone's face, or like something else, or so I think I wanted the pacing to be a little bit different, but of course I might change my mind when I watch it again, because I might see things that I didn't see before. Even just before this podcast, just like I pulled it back up on HBO Max and just kind of clicked through to kind of get a couple of images in my head to kind of like refresh my memory, and just being like, oh, that, like I don't remember that. Like that's disgusting and weird, and like there's just so many interesting. I mean, the way that they light everything, because the cinematography, as far as cinematography goes, it's not there yet. As far as, and when I mean cinematography, I'm talking about more about camera movement, and camera angle. It's not really there yet. It's still in this era of like theater being a bigger influence, so they just kind of put the camera in front of the stage, or what would be the stage, and then light the whole scene. But as far as the lighting the scene goes, it looks amazing. All the lighting is very well done, and adds this layer of hauntedness to it. I mean, they're making a they approached this as a documentary, but they're doing these reenactments. So in these reenactments, they kind of stumbled upon creating a horror movie, and I don't think that was their intention.
No,
they're just trying to
either.
depict. They're just trying to accurately depict what the interpretations of what they're studying in witchcraft, and by doing that, they're creating amazing costumes, amazing lighting and atmosphere, and acting, and all of these things that make cinema so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, all of that stuff was really great. Yeah, there's so much there. It's a very it's just kind of like a large essay of the history of witchcraft. So there's so much there to kind of digest, and like there was a lot of different thoughts going through my head as I was watching it. Besides the enjoying the craftiness of it, it was like thinking about witchcraft and and stuff in general is like it almost feels like a result of men's fear of women, of like if 500 years ago, if a woman was a threat to a man, he could just accuse her of being a witch and they could like burn her at the stake. So women already didn't have any kind of power, of course, but that they could use this fear of being called a witch, to a man's advantage to keep women in line, I guess. But it's all so there's all those thoughts, like, and I don't even really know what to do with that thought. It's just kind of this thought of like this patriarchal agenda that's existed for thousands of years, and mixed in with like I mean, there's just like some great performances in this. It's like in the silent era, you get it's all in the eyes and the face. And like the devil character was like one of my favorites, because kept popping up every other scene or whatever, with his tongue out running around like, I know.
And you know who played him, right?
It's the director, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Which is puts a whole new perspective on it. I mean, that's it. It's just like, because it's almost like the rest of the movie is so dark and serious, and for the devil to be like this kind of clown, almost, but still terrifying. But to have like a clown element to it, I think makes it even more terrifying. And I mean clown as in the way that he acts, not the way he looks or anything, because he just looks like the devil. But it's an interesting direction and great, and a great choice, because I'm sure that was just like he knew exactly what he wanted, and he knew nobody else could do it like he could.
More than likely.
And then it was like, so I don't know. I could probably keep going. I'm just like reading through my notes. I don't know how much you want me to go into everything right now, but I guess.
Well, go ahead.
I guess the other thought in terms of like patriarchal stuff was like there's like a segment where this woman is like sex crazed, and she's like trying to get a potion to get this man to have sex with her, which is it feels very inaccurate to history.
I
don't know. It's like I think it would be the other way around. Not that women can't be sex crazed; they can be sex crazed if they want. But
I think that brings up a really good point, because I think this film is very. I don't know what the word. It doesn't distinguish between what is fact and what is like fiction in terms of elements like that. I took that as like that whole vignette was just like, this is what people were saying that witches were like.
Right.
And the whole time I was reading, I was just like, this is just excuses for men that have been caught, for lack of a better phrase, with their pants down.
Yeah.
You know, like, how could you have cheated on me, husband? She gave me a love potion. You know, that kind of terror, and like,
right.
we need to find a way to blame it on someone other than me.
Yeah.
So that I wasn't in control. But it's really interesting because it kind of shows these things and blends it with the true story. When we get to the old lady who's accused as a witch and she tells her story, we see it. You know, we see elements of it. And and I'm used to, like, especially with the film storytelling language as it is, when we see something, when a character's telling us, it's true. But for this, it never distinguishes between fact and fiction. And I think it very cleverly kind of leads you along this path of being like, you know what's real.
Yeah.
You know the horror elements is not necessarily this party, this like orgy that people are having with the devil. It's what the monks are doing to these people.
Right.
And I think that was handled really well for this time.
Yeah.
It's never leading you to the door. You
Right.
know, it's showing you what, and letting you make up your own decisions.
Yeah. It's like creating this world.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's kind of just laying the facts out, I guess, of what they know. You know. But then, you know, and we'll talk about the end, I guess, when we get there. You know, the way that they transition into the modern time, which is now 100 years ago, is really interesting.
It is. And I must admit, the beginning worried me a little bit because it starts off, and before we get into it, do you know the significance of like the 7 parts in terms of just silent film?
No.
So each part would have been probably the length of a reel.
Ah, okay. That makes
which
sense.
would have been
like
what,
10
to 14 minutes ish, depending. So when it says to be continued and then it instantly gets continued, to me that is more like continuity. It's just to be like, okay, put that next reel in, let's keep it going.
Yeah.
You know? So it's split into 7 parts because that's pretty much the length, which is about 7 reels. And it starts off, and I think earlier you said about like a paper. It's like a kind of thesis. And it starts off super academic. And I don't think it's any stretch to say that it literally begins, in the beginning, there was a big bang. It's kind of like the very beginning of human race is where this film starts. Yeah.
Because they're explaining kind of the way that witchcraft came about. Yeah. And what, in terms of witchcraft, what they believe, where people came from, I guess, right? The universe and stuff. It's hard to remember everything, but the way that they do it is really cool because it's these Millier style, like puppet kind of things going on.
Yeah, dioramas.
Yeah.
And there's that big pointy stick that keeps coming out and showing you where things are.
Yeah.
And the first time I watched it, I was like, I don't know what the relevance of this is, apart from, you know, where they think the devil is. But then on rewatch, it kind of started to click that maybe this was to show how far we've come, you know, to be like, hey, look how stupid people were about what they thought the earth was like. Yeah. As to how we know it is, you know, and then look what they did to these women, thinking they were witches. You know, it just basically shows the stupidity of man from the beginning. Yeah. You know? But yeah, the first part is very academic. It's all books and pictures and like a lot of text and a lot of like, you know, dioramas of what the world looked like. And
like, here's what happens when men are in control.
Yeah. And it's very, I feel like that first part might put people off. Yeah. Because, you know, apart from images from books, you don't really get to see anything that this film promises.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely builds up to the craziness.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Because then when we get into the second part, that's when we see a dramatization of what the Middle Ages thought witches did.
Yeah.
You know, there's people kind of bringing carcasses to a house and chopping it up and making potions and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, the whole... I think maybe one of the first disturbing things is like when they bring in like this bushel of sticks.
Yeah.
And they unroll it and there's like an arm in there.
Yeah.
And then they like pull a couple of fingers off this like decaying hand. And then they like use it for a potion, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first little bit of like, oh, we got some nice little horror effects going on here. I mean, it looks real. Just the way that they pop the fingers off is like, eesh.
I know. and the whole production design of that like house is amazing. I love the cauldron and like the cat skeleton kind of hanging above it.
Yeah.
And just the smoke and the heat that you can feel in that room.
Yes.
You know, it feels very it feels like it fits, you know.
Yeah. It feels like you're watching the Middle Ages.
Yeah, exactly. And there's, you know, the whole sequence with the love potion, as you said. And it said, I kind of looked it up, and it said that they were trying to seduce a monk. So I assume, again, because obviously celibate and a life of, you know, loving God.
Yeah.
As opposed to anybody else, that this was kind of, again, you know, the fear is that, they could slip you a love potion and you can not be celibate anymore.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, it shows all these things that witches are supposed to have done in the Middle Ages. And it's very interesting, but it's still not like a narrative.
Right, yeah.
It's just kind of a series of images that are connected together.
Yeah.
And there's the the bit with the guy that gets his mouth like hexed open.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of at the end of this, which is, you know, just another cheap way of being like, oh my gosh, they're terrifying.
Yeah.
But it isn't until these middle parts, the part, I think it's like 3, 4, and 5, where we get the kind of story of it. So we focus on the trial of a witch. This guy, I guess, is kind of bedridden. And instead of being like, hey, we live in the Middle Ages, everything's disgusting, he's probably just ill because we live in filth. They were like, this old lady from next door has cursed us. She's a witch.
Yeah.
And then that sets off that whole series of events where we see kind of like the trial of witches and how they would get them to confess.
Yeah. The confessing part was interesting to me because it was like a good cop, bad cop scenario.
Yeah, it was.
The one guy is just like, hey, you know, I'm going to take care of you, don't worry. And then the other guy just grabs her and he's like, you witcher, you know. It's just funny to see things like that in such early movies. But I'm sure it's like, you know, storytelling has been around for much longer than cinema.
Yeah.
And I think story tropes like that and many more probably have existed in theater.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And stuff for forever. So that's probably just as old as time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. But used to really good effect. And I was doing some research about the people because there's the person that they first accuse of being a witch is a really little old lady who's got a very distinctive face.
Yeah.
And I was reading that her name is Marit Pedersen, and she claimed to be the first Red Cross nurse in Denmark. That was like apparently kind of what drew Christensen to her.
Yeah.
And by the time this film was being made, she was like on hard times, kind of living on the street. And he kind of was like, "Hey, you've got a face that looks like a witch. I'm going to use you in my film."
Yeah.
So he did. And she is kind of, she gets a lot of close-ups and a lot of, cruelty is seen happening to her. And then later on, we get like a weird behind-the-scenes like vignette where,
because she's the same lady at the end, right?
Yeah, because the whole way through, Christensen, who's directing it, has been saying, like, he's kind of presenting it as like, this is like my thesis, basically. This is what I think. This is what we can see. And at the end, he said one of my actors, halfway through the film said that she had seen the devil by her bedside, like in real life, and it's her.
Yeah. And
that moment is very like, okay, I don't know what really to do with that information.
Yeah.
But it just adds to the overall like uncomfortableness of watching this film.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, so many people believe in the devil and demons.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe really in the devil of like the Bible and stuff, but I don't know what's out there. It's like I don't know if like evil spirits could exist, or like there could be another dimension of reality that us as humans can't see. I mean, lots of people that take hallucinogens or like just like drugs like ayahuasca and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we'll see the same, they'll describe seeing the exact same things as everyone else, which usually isn't the case with like, usually when you like hallucinate, you see whatever your own personal things, your own fears. It's rare for people to be like, yeah, we all see the exact same person or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think, too, when people like are in crazy situations, I mean, the body is a weird thing, that we don't understand. So it's like when you're in like near death situations or like, I don't know, just anything that could cause your body to go into an altered state or something, you know what I mean, where it like is showing you things. I'm trying to like explain things that I don't fully understand, but I think it is interesting the way that they kind of, they show you all of this stuff throughout the film, and then they have that bit at the end where it's like, that lady's talking about that she's actually seen the devil before. And also they're also talking about, they're kind of showing you a juxtaposition of all the stuff that they've shown you, and then what doctors are doing in these modern times, quote unquote, which are 100 years ago now. And comparing like, a woman being a witch to, basically just a woman having hysteria.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of like another way, it seems like, for men to control women. It's like diagnosing them with hysteria. Oh, you're just crazy. You're one of those crazy bitches, So it showed, like you were saying earlier with the start of the film, it kind of is showing you, letting you realize like how far we've come in advancing our knowledge of like the universe and science and how we got here, and medicine and spiritual things, and things like that. But also by 1922, it's not really that far. And by 2022, it's still not that far.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you were saying there is 100% true. And especially when you find out more about Christensen as a person, and kind of why maybe he felt so attracted to tell this story. So he started as a doctor. He was going to school to be a doctor. So the modern medicine part there.
Yeah.
He was then singing while having a shave, I believe, and someone overheard him through a window and was like, "Hey, you should come and audition for the stage," because the guy that overheard him worked for the stage. So he went and auditioned. He was like one of 45 people to get a position on stage to sing. Very successful, did really well, and then he lost his voice randomly. So he was like, "Okay, I want to turn to acting." So he went to acting, started to build up tension again, and then got stage fright.
Wow.
And then turned to directing. So I was like, no wonder this guy is like trying so hard to kind of to give some truth to these things that the body just does.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, sleepwalking, it just happens. People do it. I know people that do it. It's not a sign of witchery. It's just the body.
Yeah.
And when I found that out, and I was like, it just made this film feel more personal to him. He was kind of, it was something that was kind of unrelated to his struggle, but he had attached himself to tell the same kind of story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's kind of that's kind of beautiful. I mean, it's
yeah.
I was already thinking like, it's like, because they're saying that, in 1922 women have hysteria and all this crap. It's like, we have come a little bit. We're a little bit further 100 years later. It's like we at least are finally, there's like this larger conversation going on about mental health and putting emphasis on taking care of our minds and and taking mental health seriously. It's really interesting to me that he had stage fright as an actor, because like I get anxiety, and like I have panic attacks often, and it's something that I've been trying to work through and not letting it be something that's like a handicap, I guess. It's like trying to understand myself and actually work through, because it's all like this mental thing, so that puts a whole different perspective on it, especially with him playing the devil being such a great character and such an over the top, but like lovely performance. I hesitate to use the word lovely, but it's a great performance.
It's the standout for sure. It's hard not to kind of attach that to it. And I don't know if he himself would say that it was kind of biographical and showing the things, but I don't know how it could not have been when he worked on this for like a year, and it's so like there's so much like text and work that's gone into it. It would have been easy to have just been like, we're just going to make a narrative film about witchcraft and kind of extended the middle part into like a feature length.
Yeah.
And just been like, hey, it's called Witches. It's about the witches. But instead
witches,
it's like a
bitches.
But instead it's like a full thesis.
Yeah.
Really.
It is. Yeah. It kind of just goes as far as it can in 1922. It literally goes to the point of bringing you into the modern era and showing you what the current views are on this.
Yeah. And I think
in a way that transitions well. It doesn't feel out of place to make that jump.
No, definitely not. And I think that it stands the testament of time. It is a product of its time, I would say. It does feel like a film from the 20s, but I think most of that is because it's set in the Middle Ages. You know, so it has that look, but it is such an interesting relic to have, I think, that just shows how far we've come from even that point. You know, the last segment where it talks about sleepwalkers and kleptomaniacs and people like, you know, pyromaniacs, all these people that that even then they didn't really have any names for them really at that point. You know, it was still a mystery, and how we are now. It's incredible. But I think some of it is down to Christensen as a person as well. I mean, when he started directing his first film, the average time in Denmark to make a film was like 2 weeks, and he took like 4 months to make his first film. Yeah, which kind of shows how meticulous he was, I think. Yeah. And in this, I was reading that he only wanted to shoot at night, which the studio hated because they had to pay everybody overtime. Because it wasn't in regular working hours. Yeah. But he was like, hey, we're making a film about the occult and about devils, and they come out at night, so we're going to make it at night.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's like, even if you're not superstitious, you know, maybe you're just a little stitious. Like, that's like, I like stuff like that, you know, because it almost gets the production in the right headspace. Yeah, because you know, even if, like I said, even if you're not superstitious, everybody's got a couple of chills. Yeah, you know, when they're out at night, you know, going through their bodies. You know, you can't really see that way. You don't know what's around the corner. You know, like it definitely makes sense that would add to the atmosphere of this whole film.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the two elements that really stick with you are, part of it is that night witches party that we get to see, where we get all the devils and the witches together, and they're like dancing and kissing the devil's backside, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And the other part is where Maria, the old woman, is talking about being impregnated by the devil and giving birth. Yeah. And there's the birth scene, which is kind of like what you were talking about, where you're like, what the hell is coming out of there? Yeah. Because we see, like, you know, we don't see it, but we see a dress, and there's these weird satanic, like, creatures that kind of come out from the dress. Yeah. And they're like crawling and, like, you know, not quite fully formed. And I was like, what the hell is that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those creatures and, like, the devils and the costumes, it's just so good, so well crafted. I mean, the people, the filmmakers that made this were just, like, obviously masters of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all the costumes are just spot on. You know, you can't really tell that, you know, it was made 100 years ago. Yeah. Because the production design is so good. Yeah. In every area. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much stuff like that just you don't know. You just don't know where it's gonna go next when you're watching.
Exactly. And that's why I love silent films so much. And I know that we've talked about it 100 times, but when you take away such an important element as sound, you know, it's like one of your senses, and you can't smell a film. You can't touch a film, you know, so the visuals have got to be stepped up. And I think that when sound comes, I mean, part of it is due to the the microphones and, you know, where they are and stuff like that. But for a while, you lose the visual aspect of it. It's just people in rooms talking. Whereas films like this are so beautifully crafted.
Yeah.
You know, every shot, there are like 3 or 4 things to be looking at.
Yeah.
And the way they tell the story, like, you only can do it through words. You know, in this, we get an early example of stop animation.
Mm-hmm.
We get backwards cranking. I don't know, that's not the proper term, but where, like, the film
they
is,
reverse it.
Yeah, so it looks like the coins are, like, being taken away.
Yeah.
We get the double exposure of the witches flying over the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
We get all these really interesting, like, images that you wouldn't see again for like 20 years until microphones and cameras kind of caught up with the invention.
Yeah.
And they're just stunning to look at, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a true work of art, I think.
I think so, man. I mean, yeah, it's unlike anything I've ever seen.
Add the tagline to the DVD, you cowards.
Yeah. There's your quote.
That's it.
Yeah, and there's also like this whole scene that was, well, there's like torture scenes and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But there's also this whole like, I felt like it was like a homoerotic thing going on with the whole the priest that's like has sinful thoughts, and he goes to the, you know, his, I don't know the hierarchy of these guys, but he goes to the other priest and confesses, and he whips him, and he's just kind of into it, and then he like stops, and he's like, "Why did you stop? My soul will be surely damned now."
Yeah.
It's a very like kind of disturbing, another level of disturbing thing to watch. And then the shot of his like back with the whips on it, with the whip marks, is that makeup is brutal.
Yeah. And just another way to say, you know, hey, these are just people. They probably have desires.
Yeah.
And just because they're blaming it on the women doesn't mean they're, you know, normal now, or like without temptation, I guess.
Yeah. Or maybe that, that like it's weird to want to suffer. Maybe.
Yeah.
That's your life choice. Is like, life is suffering. Let's suffer.
Yeah. The saddest part for me is actually at the end of like the prolonged kind of narrative bit. Took me a while to find that word. Where the priests are like, yeah, we just go from town to town finding witches, and we get the shot of them kind of getting on their horses and just riding out and leaving the square like empty and deserted. And you're like, you literally came in and destroyed this household. Like 3 of the people that lived in this household are now going to burn at the stake. The husband's like ill in bed, probably going to die. The baby is definitely going to die because they're like, this baby's going to die without its mother. You better tell us what we want to know, or you know, the baby's going to die.
Yeah.
And then when she says it, they're like, you're going to burn at the stake. You're a witch.
Yeah.
And they just ride off and leave this town. And it's like, that to me is just like, I'm just like, what? Who gave these people the authority to do this? With no.
Yeah. I mean, it's just an excuse, to commit horrible acts of violence in the name of good. Like that, it's literally just a twisted mindset that like, oh, they're witches, and so, you know, we burn witches at the stake, so I'm going to make it my life's mission to travel from town to town and just find witches and burn them, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it's gross. And I think anyone that knows anything about like the witch trials in Salem and stuff like that know that it's the whole thing of you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way if you were accused of being a witch that you were going to get out of it alive.
Yeah.
You're either going to die and they're like, hey, she wasn't a witch. That's a relief. Or you were going to survive and they'd be like, she's a witch. burner.
Yeah.
So there was no way that you're going to get out of it. I mean, they showed that through the segment of the woman drowning, where she's tied up and kind of hogtied, and they're like, if she floats, she was a witch. If she sank and drowned, she was not.
Yeah.
And it's like, what on earth is happening?
Yeah.
But again, the film shows that, and I think it shows it in a way that it's like, yeah, this is stupid, and this shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
This is not real.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's what you want, you know? It's like,
yeah.
That's, I think the beauty of this film and the beauty of the filmmaker is that he gives you everything here, and he gives you the whole package, like everything you need to know about witchcraft and think about is here.
Yeah. And I think that if it had been a narrative story, it would have taken away from it, because they would have had to show witchcraft as being real, and the people that are like accusing them of having a soapbox, you know, something to stand on and it be true.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how you could have done it in any other way, especially the way that we're talking about, where I mean, it's literally, you know, witchcraft through the ages, literally starting with this kind of like presentation and then ending in the modern times. Like, I don't know if, I mean, sure, there's other ways you could have done it, but I don't know if it would have worked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As good as this did.
It does leave you kind of a bit deflated, I guess, you know. But I mean, I know we talked about it before we started recording, but the problem with this film, and any film that's made in the Swedish language, is that the word for the end is slut.
Yeah.
So we get an unfortunate last image of 3 witches burning at the stake. We fade to black, and then the single word slut comes onto the screen, which the first time you see it, you're like, oh, okay. You know, thankfully we get the subtitles that say the end. But it's a weird thing to see after seeing women being burnt for being witches.
Yeah.
And it's the last thing that, like, you're like, oh, okay.
I mean, it's this weird piece of unintentional, I don't know what you call it, unintentional thing that I'm sure he did. I don't know, you know, it's like, I mean, was that, I mean, he probably didn't know English, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, was slut even a word back then?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, I don't think it's probably got the same connotations.
Maybe that word came from this film.
Maybe. Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's like, it's a weird thing it's aged in a interesting way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is what it is.
It's one of those, it's just one of those weird things that after watching a film about, you know, how terrible history have been to women, to see that word is very kind of, it evokes a certain feeling. You know? And like we said, it's unavoidable. It's not like they knew this word was going to mean something to us 100 years later. But it, you know, a little caveat to this film is that it is the Swedish word for the end. So just take that with you.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully you've watched the film, you know, if you're listening to this episode, but I mean, if you haven't, it's a great film to watch. I mean,
it is. Yeah.
I kind of want to see this in a theater, you know, with a group of people and just especially with a group of people that haven't seen it before, just to see their reactions and see what the reaction is to this, to the end, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. And I did think when I was watching it, I was like, man, this is a heavy film, silent film to go from, because the first one we watched was Sherlock Jr., you know? And then to drop us right into this, you know.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, it also shows the range of content that was already out there.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, dude. I mean, do you have any last thoughts on the film? Anything that's going to stick with you?
I don't know. I mean, probably. I mean, there's a lot of this conversation that I think is going to stick with me. I think the devil just popping around being like, eh.
And the way that he churns the butter. I've never seen such a sexual thing in a silent movie before.
Yeah.
He goes ham on that churn. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure there's tons of things that are going to stick with me. We'll see.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm really glad that you watched it. I mean, it's I'm glad that I watched it. Like
yeah,
I said,
I'm glad
it's
you
been
picked
on my
it.
shelf for a while.
Yeah.
And it was between this and Vampire that I watched and talked about earlier. So
yeah,
I think I definitely picked the more interesting for me of the two to talk about.
Sweet.
So yeah, dude. That was Häxan. And like we said, it is available on disc. And it's also available on HBO Max if you're in the States. For free if you're a subscriber. So go and check it out if you haven't already. And open the world to silent cinema. It's beautiful. Yeah, that's me giving my 2 cents. So as we are at the end of the film, Brandon, do you want to go ahead and see what the other person rated it on Letterboxd?
Yes, I do. My rating actually went up half a star because of this conversation.
Heyo. Perfect.
I'm going to say you rated it 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
I'm going to say the same thing. I think it was 3.5 before, but I think you might have bumped it up to 4.
Yes.
Cool. Mine is 4.5.
Nice. I was wondering.
It's always the history. You know, it's always like the behind the scenes and what this film means for like film progression.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, it does start off a little bit doughy, and you have to kind of tread through that. And, you know, when I think of other silent films that are 5 stars like Nosferatu, it doesn't quite get to that point, but
yeah,
it is a work of art, and it's singular and just beautiful. So, yeah 4.5.
Yay.
Woohoo! So this is the end of Darnish Horror Month, Brandon. We made it. 5 films, all horror-related, knocked out of the park.
Yeah, 5 Sundays this month. That was this was a good month to have it.
It was, yeah. We've watched some really, really good stuff. Obviously now, October, this is the last day. Well, tomorrow is the last day when you're listening to this. And we are going to go into November, which is a very special month for a certain part of film lovers, I guess. So, Brandon, do you want to tell us what we're going to be doing for November and what next week is going to look like?
Sure. Actually, what we have a guest next week.
Yes.
So he's going to tell us what we're watching. But we do have another theme going on for November, right? Which is something we've started recently. I mean, just with October, we did horror movies. And so we want to kind of keep that going for some months probably. And November is going to be Noir-vember.
Ooh.
So all noir films.
Exciting. Yeah.
I'm going to now turn it over to our special guest who's going to reveal his choice and what we'll be watching next week.
Awesome.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Mitch Norris, and I will be a guest on next week's podcast. And I have been given the great opportunity and responsibility of picking a film for Noir November. And my choice is Michael Mann's 1981 thriller, Thief, starring James Caan. I'm really excited to watch this film. Michael Mann is a favorite director of mine, and I haven't seen this film. And also, R.I.P. to James Caan, and I'm excited to jump into one of his iconic roles. So I will see you guys next time, and I look forward to discussing this great movie.
Sweet. I'm looking
wait.
forward to that. It's actually a movie I put on my list recently.
Hey, that's great. I love it when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. That's what we'll be watching next week. So watch along with us, find the film, and then tune in next week to hear what all three of us make of the movie. And also, we get to know our guest a little bit better, which is also exciting.
Yes.
So, lots of reasons to tune in next week. That does bring us to the end of the show. As Brandon mentioned, next week we'll be kicking off our Noir-Vember month. So subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode of that. And go back and listen to all our previous episodes that are streaming everywhere. You can find the show on Twitter and Instagram at Film Church Radio or Lewis carving Nosferatu Pumpkin. There's only one way to find out. Go and follow us. That's how. And you can follow us individually on Letterboxd. Brandon is at Selmanscope, and I am at WalkerLewis3007. To keep up with what we've been watching week in, week out, we'll also have all our back episodes streaming on all good podcast platforms. Please leave us a rating and review. Helps other people find the show, join the congregation, and watch along with us. And that is what we want to do. So, yeah, go and do that. All that's left to say is... And so, we will console ourselves with the notion that the mildly temperate shower of the clinic has replaced the barbaric methods of medieval times.
Slut.
That's a wrap. Say your Film Church prayers. Amen.
Amen.
Billaboop.